Welcome to Mindfully Sovereign, the podcast that invites you to reclaim your feminine self authority and unleash the abundance within. My name is Safa, I am your host, and I'm here to help guide you past your limiting beliefs and into the heart of your unwavering and undeniable power. This podcast is all about reclaiming your feminine self authority, learning the art of self seduction, and awakening your inner goddess so that you can become an aligned match to your most abundant life yet. So grab a cup of tea, get cozy, and get ready to become mindfully sovereign. Hello, hello. Happy Monday and welcome back to Mindfully Sovereign. I am so happy that you are joining me today. I have a beautiful conversation in store for us today. And I want to ask you to do something really quick. Before we get started, I want you to take a moment to close your eyes and take a deep breath and then exhale everything out through the lips and then just check in with yourself and see how you're feeling. So, if you were clenching those teeth, if your shoulders were tight, and if you were feeling all kinds of constriction in your body, I just want you to take a moment to ease off and let yourself and your body know that they have permission to relax, that they have permission to take up space freely, and that they don't necessarily have to perform or be in the act of doing anything right now. This is an important part of our own process. It's an important part of our days, I believe. And it's a great way for us to connect not just to our bodies, but to our minds, to our hearts, and to our nervous systems. And that's a little bit of what we're going to be talking about today from a very unique angle. So, when your nervous system is ill at ease, when it doesn't feel safe, it has a couple of really interesting ways in which it responds. And so we've probably heard about a couple of them before, right? You might have heard about fight or flight. So, fight or flight are two important pieces to the puzzle, but rarely, if ever, do we hear about two more pieces, which are freeze or fawn. These two responses are just as important and they play as big a role in your nervous system regulation as the other two, the ones that we're more familiar with. So, fight or flight, you've heard before. This is where if a dinosaur is coming after you, you're either going to get away or you're going to fight. But what happens when your nervous system, instead of choosing one of those two, decides to freeze? Think deer in headlights, right? Constriction, lack of breath, just fear, not knowing what to do, not knowing where to go, just no movement, right? Or fawn. Fawn is a very interesting one, and I'm building up to that. But I want to share this piece to the puzzle as it regards to, or as it relates to, our feminine wounds and the way in which we as women show up for ourselves in this world. So you might be thinking, what the hell are you talking about, Safa? This is making no sense. I thought if we were doing this, we were going to be doing nervous system regulation, somatic practices, and maybe we were going to be looking at yoga or breathing or meditation. And these are all good things to talk about. And you know me, this is a world of yes, and it's a world of nuance, it's a world of introspection and mindful sovereignty. So, what I want us to do today is to learn how these two, especially the fawn response, show up for us as the feminine in this world. And so, the reason why this matters is because one of the things that we have been conditioned to do as women in this world is to people please to an extreme that is beyond unhealthy. We've been taught that to a very big extent, the happiness, the contentment, the satisfaction, the fulfillment, and the well being or the welfare of the people in our lives rests solely on our shoulders and on whether or not we are willing to bend over backwards to make sure that everything that we do pleases that person and sits well with them. And we see this in many different areas and in many different ways of our society. We see this when we over apologize for merely existing, for merely taking up space in this world. We see this when we find ourselves, minimizing our voice, minimizing our worth, minimizing our value, minimizing our boundaries, minimizing our values, everything that makes us who we are for the sake of keeping the peace, maybe in a household that is not so stable or where there is a level of toxicity present. We see this when we make allowances or where we start becoming enabling of certain behaviors and certain people just because we don't want to make them feel badly or we don't want to hurt their feelings or we want to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to us be the solution somehow to what is going on with them. And it's such a heavy burden. It crumbles and it destroys and it highly affects every part of who we are, our souls, our minds, our hearts, our physical well-beings. Your body starts falling to pieces. Believe me, I have been there. I have done this. I've been the one whose body completely crumbled down. Zero immune system, zero ability to take any kind of stress, continuously getting sick, fatigued, inflammation, all of these things. I know what it feels like when you are in that state of over giving of yourself. And so we have many different ways in which we can frame this. And you might have heard me say this before, but I will repeat it just as it pertains to this conversation. The feminine itself, really, in a lot of ways, has been represented by and continues to be represented by that idea or that beautiful imagery of the chalice. And from that space, we are able to gift and receive in equal measure. And it's a problem when we've been giving so much that the chalice is completely empty. There is nothing else to do but scrape bottom. And even that is like a challenge. You're just kind of like really starting to take apart the essence of the chalice itself. And that's what happens in our lives when we overdo the act of giving of ourselves and from ourselves for the sake of, without taking into consideration that we have needs, that we have value, that we get to receive and that we get to ask for the things and the support and the needs, the things that we also have in our lives that are also important and that merit importance, that are worthy of paying attention to in our lives. And lately, the conversation that I have been having with my clients, with my friends, and now with you is that I find it actually really interesting that this is happening because it makes sense that as a whole, our global subconscious and unconscious as a feminine energy have been tied to this fawn response. So the fawn response is basically, imagine that you are with a cat. And if you've ever been around a cat, sometimes the cat will kind of cozy up to you and scrunch themselves around your leg and arch their backs a little bit and really ask you to pet. And sometimes it comes from a place of the cat itself being afraid, not sure what you're going to do. You could be a potentially dangerous creature. And so the fastest way to gain your alliance or your allegiance or your favor is by purring at you and getting close to you and asking to be petted. And so all of these things, this is a way of fawning after a kind of response, after the kind of, oh, you're not going to do anything bad to me. Okay, okay, phew, okay, I'm safe. And so as women, we've learned to over fawn. We're kind of stuck in that nervous system dysregulation aspect of selfhood because, again, we've been taught, we've been told that the expectancy is that we give of ourselves so overly much that there is nothing left. And it's fine if there's nothing left of you as long as the other person has been quote unquote nurtured, quote unquote cared for. And then some people will take that further and say, well, that is what the feminine quote unquote is meant to do. And that gets into the whole discussion about how we so often genderize conversations that have nothing to do with gender or everything that has to do with energetics, and that these are aspects of selfhood or beingness that belong to everyone, but we've just continued to see them through the lens of gender. And that's not the conversation at all. So that's kind of the way that that starts getting lost. In this particular case, I am, in fact, focusing on women because A, that's my area of expertise, as you know, and B, right now I am talking about the lived experience that we have had as a whole in a world that demands that we be the sole provider of emotional fortitude, that we are the safe space for everybody, that we are the ones taking care of everyone else at our own expense. And how it relates to that nervous system dysregulated response of fawning. So, as a Another example, just in case you're still like, okay, I sort of see it, but I'm still not sure what this looks like in real life. I will tell you a little bit about myself because I'm sort of the expert of fawning or was the expert of fawning for many, many, many years in my life, to include late into my late adulthood, partially because I grew up in an environment where it wasn't safe to express displeasure. It wasn't safe to say that there were needs that were not being met. And it was often any kind of need or desire or any kind of, hey, this actually doesn't agree with me, or I want to have a deeper conversation, was actually met with either avoidance or some semblance of an explosive interaction in the household. It was always very challenging. Plus, I felt that I had the burden of ensuring that everyone in the household was happy and at peace. And so I spent a lot of my life, young adult life, and also young life, walking on eggshells. The funny thing is that then I replicated that in a really toxic marriage that I am no longer in. You might know the story, you might not, but yeah, I'm no longer in that situation. Thank goddess. It's a whole other story, maybe for a whole other day. But I learned to be in that state of fun very early in life. And as much as recently, I was having a conversation with my mom, and she brought this letter to me about a time when I was in high school. High school, mind you, already. This is no longer even like middle school or like kindergarten, but which just blew my mind. So she brings this letter to me and she tells the story to me and my now husband, who she tells the story that we were having some sort of disagreement when I was in high school. And I obviously have zero recollection of this, but she says that I came to her with this letter. You This letter was pages long. This wasn't, mind you, the first or the last time I did this, by the way, because as you can tell, I'm a very verbose, very loquacious sort of human being. And when I get to express myself on paper, that can sometimes get a little long winded. It can sometimes get a little long. And it was very, very fawny. I was so completely terrified that I had displeased my own mother to the point where she would no longer love me, where she would reject me, where she would hate me, where she would no longer want me around. All personal in my mind stories, by the way. But I was so completely terrified that that was going to be the reality that I kicked into my fawn response, which the fawn response was a several pages long letter about how wrong I was, how bad of a daughter I was, how much I like apologized. Like the reading this letter, if you can hear it in my voice, it's amusing in the sense that I really truly do love myself so much right now, and I have so much compassion for myself, especially my younger self, because she went through a hell of a lot. But I have so much love, compassion, respect, and even curiosity for and with myself that I can't help but chuckle a little and just be like, "Oh, sweetheart, you really were scared. You really did think that all of these horrible things were going to happen just by virtue of you expressing yourself, or by virtue of you having maybe a small temper, or by virtue of you, I don't know, something. Maybe I did do something that wasn't great." Again, this is high school. I don't remember. But my point is that the response was so far out of proportion with what had happened. And I thought that this was the thing that I needed to do to quote unquote make amends. Maybe it also had something to do with the fact that I did grow up in a high control religion environment where making amends and like supplicating for forgiveness was actually not that far out of a concept. It was also sort of expected. And so I internalized all of this information and then some, and learned early in my life that I basically had to beg for everything, but for my mere existence in a lot of ways. And that is what I'm talking about, is like that fawning response. The fawning being this overly adulating, over apologetic, overly saccharine, overly sweet. Well, that's the same thing. Okay. But the overly saccharine and sweet, just performative letter that was begging, please don't throw me away. Please don't see me as less than perfect. Please don't see me as less than good. And please don't tell me that I'm actually not worthy, because I don't even believe that I'm worthy myself. And that's the kind of denseness, heaviness that we can often tap into as women in general in this life because of the things that we have been taught to expect and of the things that are supposedly expected of us as good, quote unquote, good little girls and women, right? We're expected to be sweet and gentle and kind and nurturing. We're expected to be soft spoken and even present softly in our looks with like long, luscious, perfectly curated hair and wearing sweet summer dresses and all of these makeup that you can barely tell is makeup. All of these things that have been placed on our shoulders as shackles, in truth, to keep us in a position of subservience to an idea that has zero bearing on who we actually are as human beings in this real fucking world, in this real fucking life. But we've taken all of that and whatever other information personally we have compiled to prove, right, to our egos that, yeah, in fact, it is true. In order to survive in this world, in order to be quote unquote accepted in this world, you do have to fawn. You do have to bend a knee. You do have to bend over backwards. You do have to walk on eggshells. You do have to make yourself less. You do have to pretend that you are not as amazing as you are. You do have to be more like in deference of your power. You can't boast. You can't brag. You can't say that you are awesome. You have to be tiny. And if you so happen to be in a relationship with someone, you have to let that person shine above you. You have to support their dreams and go with their goals, and yours can take a back seat because, after all, you are not even supposed to be placing yourself at the center of your universe. Everybody else is supposed to be at the center of your universe. Your children actually are supposed to go first. They're the ones that you have to really pay attention to. And you have to make sure that you do everything possible to make them happy at all levels in every way. And listen, I am not saying that we should not care for, love, cherish, nurture, and embrace the people in our lives. I am not saying that. Please hear my words. What I am saying is that we have internalized so much of the, not even the flip side of the coin, but the otherworldly expectation that we belittle ourselves at every possible outcome through everything that we go in this life, that we lose ourselves and our nervous system. This is how big this conversation is and why it matters. Our nervous system has learned that we have to be in fawn mode almost all day, every day, especially when we feel like, oh, we might have crossed the line, or like, oh my gosh, I said something in that meeting and everybody looked at me, and maybe now they think that I'm trying to be the star of the show, and that's not okay. So now I'm going to bend over backwards and kind of make amends with that person and make myself smaller and say, I really didn't mean to be the one who took over that project. If you want it, it's absolutely yours. I didn't mean to step on your toes. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That thing, that fawning thing is not healthy. It doesn't make you more humble. It doesn't make you more kind. It doesn't make you more nice. It doesn't do any of the things that you might believe somewhere in your inside that it is doing. All it's doing is minimizing your voice, deflating your power, and putting you in a position where you have to beg, proactively beg for approval on a consistent basis. Episode 1 of this season, we really looked at the shrinkification that is presently going on of our bodies and how it relates to our personal development, autonomy, our voice, our ability to take up space in this world. And this is basically the same in a different guise, or a very similar conversation from a different point of view, or an extension of a conversation that continues to be about how we are choosing to be in this life, who we are choosing to be, and what that looks like in real time in terms of our own empowerment, in terms of our own self care, in terms of how deeply we can fall in love with ourselves and how willing we are to be the sovereigns of our lives that we are meant, absolutely meant to be, because you are meant to be the queen of your life. You are meant to be the main character. And you've heard me talk about that before, and it is central, it's essential, it's important beyond measure. This whole self deference, self dismissal, self sacrificial martyrdom thing that we have learned to do is affecting every area of our lives. It's affecting our intimacy. It's affecting the way in which we show up to work. It's affecting our careers, thereby. It's affecting our relationship with our children. It's affecting our dynamics with our family members. It's affecting our relationships with our friends. It's affecting our bodies and our health. It's really challenging for us to learn regulation in our nervous systems when we continuously feel like we are in danger, and we internalize that to the point where our nervous systems never stop performing one way or another: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, which is the one that we're really focusing on right now. You are stuck in fawn the whole day, bending over backwards, dismissing yourself. And then you wonder why at the end of the day you get home and you are exhausted. The mere thought of even walking or making a meal or sitting down to have a conversation with your significant other or picking up the phone and checking in with your friends, oh, all of these things feel so dense and heavy. And no wonder when the whole day you've spent it fawning and you've yet to make time to regulate, to check in with yourself, to process the emotion, to process the information, to put yourself at the helm and listen to what it is that your mind, your heart, your body, your soul are all telling you are important and necessary for you to live a life that feels full, a life that is absolutely overflowing with joy, with contentment, with peace, with fulfillment. So often we go in search of purpose and fulfillment out there without first having come to terms with the fact that we don't even know how to allow ourselves to feel fulfilled in mere presence of ourselves. And it's really challenging, near impossible to get there when we don't know how to regulate, when we are completely stifled, stuck, and made into like a little ball of knotted nerves because our nervous system is so aggravated from being stuck in these modes day in and day out, 24/7, no matter who we are speaking to. And it does get exhausting. And it is a not just a emotional exhaustion, but you can feel it physically. Your body starts breaking down. I told you, I fully understand this. I really got to the point where I was getting sick almost every week or every month, just sick because I was doing the most to apologize almost for my very existence, to say nothing of the fact that I was always burning the candle at both ends and completely dismissing myself, my needs, my wants, my desires, or just the base necessary things in this life that I needed, like nutrition, water, going to the bathroom. You've heard me talk about that before, but it really is that pervasive, and it seems that innocuous that you're like, well, I'm just gonna sit here and push through this deadline, and then once I'm done writing this paragraph, then I can go to the bathroom. Meanwhile, what are you doing to your whole system by doing that, right? So it seems sort of like menial, but it really is a bigger conversation than we often realize, because it's just a microcosm of the macro. Because if you're letting yourself dismiss yourself in that area, you're definitely letting yourself dismiss yourself in the other areas of your life. And so you're quieting your voice. You're making yourself non-existent. You're believing yourself not important. You're buying into this farce that unless you have something to contribute that is productive, a certain kind of productive, you're not worthy of even existence in this society. And that is really freaking awful. Plus, it's a lie. It is completely untrue. And again, so us women, we are stuck in this gear of fun because we've been taught to do that. We've been taught to put on the show. We've been taught to be the one that is always there for everybody, regardless of how we feel. We've been taught that if we ever so much as even think about expressing that we need something, we are needy, we're no longer the cool girl, we are inconveniencing everybody, we are a burden. And that could not be further from the truth. This is often where our boundaries crumble down, where we find ourselves feeling resentful. Because if I can't express to you who I am and be myself, and if I'm always prioritizing you above me at every turn for whatever reason, of course I'm going to resent you. Why wouldn't I? So that's the thing. So my mom comes over with this letter and she's like, "Look how sweet, my good little girl. She's like always so nice and so thoughtful and always thinking of others." And this was such a beautiful moment. And I know that to her it meant that. And to me, it was like, damn, how far out of myself was I willing to go to make myself small enough to be perceived as that quote unquote little girl? Like how ready, willing, able, and adept was I at simply treating myself as if I was the problem and I needed to apologize for my very existence. It's a little crazy to look at. And that's the thing is the world around us actually sees that as great. If you're self-depreciating, "Ooh, she's so humble. She is so nice. She is just so great." Okay, sure. Not really. We're funning. We're trying to do the, "Oh my gosh, please don't hurt me. Please don't look at me this way. Please don't other me. Please don't push me aside. Please don't reject me. Please don't tell me that you don't think that I'm not worthy enough. Please." We're fawning and we're doing it in this way. We're losing touch with the sovereign part of ourselves. And we're becoming slaves once again to another wound that doesn't actually bear any or hold any power over us unless we choose to allow it to. And I think we're ready to not choose that anymore. This is one of those conversations where it's good for us to go deeper, deeper with the learning, deeper with the conversations, deeper with the observation, the curiosity, with the self seduction. Because it's all good and well to say, "I am ready to be empowered and I'm going to speak my truth and I'm going to hold my boundaries and my values are intact and I'm going to walk through the door and everyone is going to look at me because I'm going to command the presence." It's all good and well to see that. But when something happens and we have disappointed someone, because by the way, disappointment is one of the biggest reasons why the fawn response is so deeply ingrained in the feminine psyche. Because if there's one thing that we can't stand is the idea of disappointing someone. And I'm going to tell you the truth. You are going to disappoint people time and again in your life, not maliciously, but you are. Heck, you're going to disappoint yourself too. And that doesn't make you any less valuable. It doesn't make you any less quote unquote good. It doesn't make you a monster. It doesn't make you selfish. It doesn't make you conceited. It doesn't make you any of the awful, horrible things that you might want to tell yourself it means. It just means disappointment happened. Sometimes expectations aren't met in the exact same way that we believe they're going to. Sometimes we will mess up. Sometimes we do need to apologize sincerely because a wrong was done. And it's up to us in our own personal sovereignty to hold ourselves accountable intelligently, wisely, mindfully, and to also not fall into the trap of shriveling up in the idea of having disappointed someone simply because, for example, we were holding a standard or we were strong in our boundaries or we said no and no was the complete sentence. That is going to disappoint some people. You showing up from a place of empowered action is going to disappoint some people in your life because they're going to have been expecting you to do the opposite. To them, the you that continued to show up in fawn mode was much more palatable, much more agreeable, and not disappointing. Whereas the version of you who is going to show up and hold her own is going to disappointing. Yes, and remember, there are times when, yes, we will disappoint because, oof, we messed up. At that point, radical ownership is necessary, and we can take accountability, apologize sincerely, make amends if needed, heal where needed, show up in presence as needed. And even still in that conversation, I am not talking about belittling the self in order to do any of those things or belittling others in order to do those things. No. And also, too, it matters that we be present and cognizant of where in our lives we are choosing to prioritize this mirage of perfection that we want to portray in order to not let people down in our lives so that they continue to favor us. That's fawn. It's just a different way to phrase it in the whole nervous system arena. But it's important in this conversation because I firmly believe that is one of the reasons why our feminine wounds are so like palpable all the time is we're still stuck in this fawn and we don't know how to regulate. We haven't learned it yet. Or maybe we're starting to get familiar what that looks like, but this is one area where we might have not considered, oh, you know what? Yeah, I actually am very dysregulated when it comes to disappointing people in my life. And I don't exactly know how to hold the power in that, right? Or maybe it's not disappointment that keeps you in fawn. Maybe it's the idea of rejection. Rejection can be very harsh, and yet it happens. I'm not even going to spin it off by saying something super new agey, I guess, or super dismissive actually is a better word for it. Super dismissive in the sense of rejection is redirection. I think this is a good platitude. And sometimes it can ease the pain that we find in our egos when we've been rejected. And sometimes it's very true because sometimes you really are like just being prevented from going down a path that wasn't meant for you. And at the same time, sometimes rejection is just, yeah, it wasn't alignment, there wasn't a match, it wasn't the moment, the time, the place, the person, the situation, and that doesn't mean anything about you in terms of you are not the problem. You are not an awful, broken, horrible thing that was rejected because you're less than or you're not worthy or you're not good enough or whatever. No, it's not that. It just happened. I mean, you yourself are going to have to reject some ideas, reject some people, reject some jobs, reject some opportunities, right? Because they're not going to be in alignment with you. And so, if you know that there are times when you have to do that, and it's not going to be personal, and it's not necessarily going to mean that this is like a horrible human being in front of you, sometimes maybe, right? But not necessarily, then you understand this. And so, the fawn doesn't have to kick in. You don't need to put yourself in a state of pleading to be accepted, pleading to be seen, pleading to be understood, pleading to not be rejected, to not be disposed of, even to not be pushed to the side. You don't have to put yourself in that place. You deserve better and you get to show up from a place of empowered action that draws in better for yourself in your life on a daily basis, as long as you keep showing up for yourself and asking the questions and having these conversations with yourself and paying attention and being mindful and recognizing when one of these things has kicked in. A lot of times, it's just a matter of becoming aware of it first. Just becoming aware of it gives you that key, that window into the perspective. And the next time it happens in real time, you might have a sense of almost watching outside of yourself, almost like an out of body experience of like, oh, I'm having this response to this thing, and I think it's coming from this place. It does actually start feeling that way. And at some point down the line, when you've done a little bit more of the practice, right? Then you might catch it before. You might be like, oh, I'm about to respond from a place of, I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to listen to my body. I'm going to regulate, remind myself and my body specifically that I am safe. And then from that place, I'm going to take action and talk or not talk or say, hey, I need a break or distance myself from this space for now or whatever it is that you might be needing in that moment. There's so many different ways in which this can go. But fawning isn't going to help anybody, and staying in a fawning state as women as a whole is just going to do the same thing that shrinking ourselves is going to do: enslave us, put us in a state of subjugation, make it so that we become more pliable, more malleable, and make it so that we continue to think less of ourselves when the truth is that we are magnificent, powerful, beautiful, worthwhile beings. And that's the truth. There's no like, because we did this, because we performed, because we produced, because no, we simply are. And getting there is just going to be challenging, if not impossible, if we are stuck in this fawning space, right? So, where in your life can you see that you've been in a fawning way as a means to protect you from X, Y, or Z? Are you protecting yourself from disappointing others? Are you protecting yourself from maybe letting others see who you really are? Are you protecting yourself? What are you protecting yourself from? And can you see how that fawning response isn't actually the answer? I think if I would have had more of this awareness when I was younger, maybe instead of writing this plea to my mother to like, please, I'm such a scumbag. Please don't hate me. Instead of doing that, I might have actually been able to have a conversation with her that would have allowed for us to be closer instead of keeping distance for so many years or making it impossible for us to communicate. It's important for us to see where in our lives these systems are at play so that we can proactively become sovereign and make decisions and choices, and also become observers. Some days you're not going to be able to be the one that makes the best, most empowered decision. Some days you're going to be the one that watched as you were not making the best decision. And that's okay. Now you get to be the one that learns from it. And sometimes you're going to do that over and over again until you're no longer banging your head against the wall anymore. And that's okay because you're human. This is part of the deal. Remember, there is no perfect, there is no end goal. There is no, I'm healed and I'm free and I'm never going to experience everything. No, sovereignty means growth, exponential growth over time, little by little, one step at a time, one step on the ladder at a time, going further, going deeper, taking up more space, understanding more, becoming more, being more sovereign, more, and not in the way of like, oh, it's like this bottomless pit that can't be filled, but no, in the fact that we can continue to be expansive, continue to take up space, continue to be more of who we are in a very beautiful, devoted, loving, empowering, self assured, self caring, nourishing, lovely way. And so this is important. Where are you fawning? How are you fawning? Why are you fawning? Can you see also too how as a collective, the more we fawn, the more we give up our rights as women, the more we kind of put ourselves in a position where we exploit ourselves, even where we continue to perpetuate the horrible wounding of not just the patriarchy, but the systems that are in place to make all of us feel less than so that we can continue to prioritize something outside of ourselves so that we can keep chasing after it, so that we can keep being at the effect of. It matters. It's a valuable conversation. And there are ways for us to relearn how to regulate. There are ways for us to relearn how to speak with ourselves, to ourselves, from ourselves, for ourselves, so that we can then break the cycle and stop fawning at every turn and find peace, find plentitude, find empowered action that comes from a space that isn't reactive, but proactive. And the little breathing pause that we took at the beginning of the podcast is one way in which we can do this. We can also learn through movement, through dance, through shaking. Somatic work is like so interesting because there are so many different venues and so many different ways in which we can do this. And when you can work with someone who can see those spaces in your own life, in your own words, in your own energetic field, without you even knowing that they are there, and for that person to be like, "Hey, like, have you noticed that when you talk about this, this is what you revert to, or that it's pulling you down this way?" Having someone to help us do that is lovely. Not because we're giving power to someone outside of ourselves, but because someone is reflecting back what's already inside of us. The power that's already in that we sometimes can't see because, as the saying goes, we can't see far past our nose, right? Or through the woods. Now I'm confusing my Mexican and my English idioms and things, but because that person is going to be able to see the things that we often can't reach quite so directly because we're still in this space of nervous system dysregulation, of kerfuffle, of of oh my gosh, I'm not even listening because right now the biggest problem is this problem and I don't see everything else. And so having someone to reflect that back to us and to say, "Hey, deep breath." This word you're choosing, what does it mean? Are you carrying it in your shoulders? Are you carrying it in your stomach? Are you carrying it in your jawline? Is it telling you a story that you need to put on a performance? And what is that performance and why? Someone who can ask those questions is so vital. And that's precisely why I do the work that I do. So if you've ever been curious about what your nervous system is saying and what it would be like to regulate, self and co regulate, and to stop the cycles, freeze, fawn, fight, flight. If you want to know what it's like to be sovereign and also to observe it all, then my door is always open to you. You know where to find me on Instagram at mindfully sovereign, via email info at your soulful goddess. I am here for you and my door is always open. And I encourage you to spend this week really observing where the fawn response might be residing in your life and what it feels like in your body, what stories it's telling you, what belief systems it's feeding into, what wounds it's aggravating, and what it looks like. You may not be like I was, right? Where you need to write a 50-page long letter, but you may be fawning in your own way, in your own life, and it's good for you to know where it's showing up and why, so that the proactive action can kick in and you can claim yourself as queen, because you are queen of your life. You are the main character. So let's start acting like it, meaning showing up, asking questions, self seducing. Take time this week to observe and take time to maybe talk about this with your girlfriends. Say like, "Hey, do you feel like women fawn? How do we fawn? Do we do it just in that, like, we apologize for everything, that we say sorry for everything? Do we do it? How do we do it? What does that look like?" These are conversations that I want for all of us to be having with one another. The point isn't for me to just show up here and talk at you for hours, which I obviously could. I'm very verbose and very loquacious. But the point is for this to become medicine for all of us, to take it, what I used to say in yoga a lot when I'm teaching is like take it off the mat. So this is take it off just the head, off the land of knowledge, and make it an embodied action, an embodied experience. An embodied experience meaning observe, converse, explore, critical think it out, get curious about it, reach out, you know? Have these conversations, and you know what? And that might actually help also in your intimacy in your life, and might help you understand this system a little bit better. And again, if you want someone to walk side by side with you as you explore this and turn it into fire so that you can shine more brightly in your life, I am here for you all day, every day. So reach out if you need me at Mindfully Sovereign or info at Your Soulful Goddess. And thank you so much for joining me today. This has been such a yummy, delicious conversation, and I can't wait to see you next time on Mindfully Sovereign.